The space between stars was supposed to be empty, but today it was crowded with death. 300 warships hung in the darkness like a swarm of metal insects, their weapons armed and ready. The Zrathian hegemony fleet stretched across the void in perfect formation, each vessel painted in the traditional crimson and gold of their empire. They had controlled this region of space for over 2,000 years. Nothing challenged them here. Nothing dared. Commander Vexlar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and felt satisfaction warm his chest. His 4 eyes tracked the small vessel on the main display screen. It was pathetic, really. A single human ship, barely larger than a cargo hauler, drifting toward their position with what seemed like complete ignorance of the danger it faced. "Magnify the image," Vexlar ordered, his voice carrying the clicking accent of his species. The screen shifted, bringing the human vessel into sharp focus. Vexlar's mandibles clicked together in what passed for laughter among his kind. The ship was a mess. Hull plates of different colors showed where repairs had been made with whatever materials the humans could find. Scorch marks from old battles covered its surface. One of the engine nacelles looked slightly bent, as if it had been damaged and never properly fixed. "They call that a warship?" his tactical officer asked, genuine confusion in his voice. Across the fleet, similar conversations were happening. The Zrathians had brought allies for this patrol. Ships from the Kelnar Collective, the Vraxis Union, and a dozen other species floated among the hegemony vessels. All of them were now focused on the lone human craft. Communication channels filled with laughter and mocking comments. "The apes have learned to fly," someone said over the open channel. "Barely," another voice added. "Look at that ship. I've seen better engineering from children." Vexlar allowed the mockery to continue for a moment. Humans were new to the galactic community. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 20 years ago, and in that time they had impressed exactly no one. Their technology was primitive. Their ships were slow. Their weapons were laughably outdated. They still used kinetic projectiles, for crying out loud. When the rest of the galaxy had moved to energy weapons centuries ago, the human vessel came to a stop exactly 5,000 kilometers from the hegemony formation. "That took some skill at least," Vexlar admitted privately. "Their navigation was adequate." "They're hailing us, Commander," the communications officer reported. "Put them through. Let's hear what the apes have to say." A human face appeared on the screen. It was a female. Vexlar had learned to recognize the differences, with dark skin and hair pulled back in a tight knot. Her uniform was simple, dark blue with silver insignia. Her eyes were calm, showing no fear despite facing a fleet that could turn her ship into vapor in seconds. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Space Navy vessel Defiance. We are on a peaceful journey through this region and request safe passage through hegemony space." Her voice was steady, professional. Vexlar found it irritating. She should be terrified. "Captain Chen," Vexlar said, making sure his translator carried the proper tone of condescension. "You are in violation of hegemony territory. Your vessel will power down its engines and prepare to be boarded. We will study your primitive technology, and you and your crew will submit to hegemony authority." There was a pause. Captain Chen's expression didn't change. "I'm afraid we can't do that, Commander. The Defiance operates under human sovereignty. We have every right to peaceful transit through this region of space under the Galactic Council's freedom of navigation protocols." Laughter erupted across the fleet channels again. Someone made a rude comment about human intelligence. Another suggested they should simply destroy the ship and be done with it. Vexlar felt his patience wearing thin. "Captain, you seem to misunderstand your situation. You have 1 ship. I have 300. Your options are surrender or death. There is no third choice." "There's always a third choice, Commander," Chen replied calmly. The audacity was remarkable. Vexlar's mandibles clicked together rapidly, a sign of anger among his people. "You dare threaten the hegemony? You and your broken toy of a ship?" "No threat, Commander. Just a statement of fact." Vexlar had heard enough. He cut the communication channel and turned to his weapons officer. "Power all weapons. Target their engines first. I want them alive to learn their lesson." Across the fleet, 300 warships activated their weapon systems. Energy buildup lit up the darkness as plasma cannons charged. Missile tubes opened like hungry mouths. Shield generators hummed to full power. The amount of firepower focused on the single human vessel could have destroyed a small moon. On the Defiance's bridge, Captain Chen watched the threat displays light up like a festival. Her crew was silent, waiting for orders. She had known this moment would come. Earth had sent her out here specifically for this reason. Humanity needed to know how the galaxy would respond to their presence. Now they had their answer. The aliens thought humans were weak. They thought human technology was primitive. They thought one small ship posed no threat. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Chen took a slow breath and touched the communication panel. "All stations, this is the captain. Execute protocol Prometheus on my mark." Her weapons officer looked up, eyes bright with anticipation. Finally, Chen allowed herself a small smile. The aliens wanted to see what humans could do. Very well. They would get a demonstration they would never forget. She pressed the button. "Gentlemen, ladies, light them up." The Defiance's engines flared bright blue and the ship surged forward directly at the Hegemony flagship. 300 alien crews watched in confusion as the human vessel accelerated toward certain death. What were these primitives thinking? They were about to find out. The first second was confusion. The Defiance didn't run away or try to dodge. It flew straight at Commander Vexler's flagship like a missile. The alien crews hesitated, fingers hovering over firing controls. This didn't make sense. Was it a suicide run? Were the humans that insane? The second brought the first warnings. Sensor stations across the Hegemony fleet started screaming alerts. The readings coming from the human ship were impossible. The power signature was climbing higher and higher, far beyond what a ship that size should be able to generate. Energy readings were going off the scale into numbers that didn't make sense. "What is that?" Vexler demanded, staring at his tactical display. His science officer's voice shook. "Commander, their reactor signature is increasing exponentially. The readings suggest they're generating a gravitational field equivalent to a small star. That's impossible. A ship that size can't contain that much power." The third second was when reality broke. The Defiance released something from its hull. Small objects, no bigger than escape pods, shot out in all directions. They looked harmless. They were anything but. The fourth second was when the first Hegemony ship died. A cruiser fired its main plasma cannon at the approaching human vessel. The bolt of superheated energy lanced through space bright enough to blind unprotected eyes. It should have hit. The range was perfect. The aim was true. But the plasma bolt curved. It bent in midair like light around a black hole, spiraling into one of the small objects the Defiance had released. The plasma vanished into nothing, swallowed completely. What just happened? Someone shouted over the communication channel. The fifth second brought understanding and terror. The small objects the Defiance had released weren't weapons in any traditional sense. They were singularities, tiny controlled black holes. Humanity had learned to create and contain miniature black holes and was using them as weapons. The concept was insane. Every species in the galaxy had agreed that weaponizing singularities was too dangerous. The risk of losing control was too high. Apparently humans didn't care about risk. The sixth second was chaos. 3 Zerathian cruisers found themselves too close to one of the singularities. They tried to fire their engines to pull away, but gravity didn't care about engines. The 3 ships, each massing over 50,000 tons, were yanked together like toys in a child's hands. Metal screamed. Shields collapsed. The ships crumpled, crushed by forces their designers had never imagined they would face. The 7th second was when the Defiance opened fire with its main guns. They were railguns, primitive kinetic weapons that the aliens had dismissed as outdated. But these railguns were different. The projectiles were accelerated using the same gravitational technology, reaching speeds close to the speed of light. The aliens had designed their shields to stop energy weapons. Energy could be dispersed, reflected, absorbed. But a solid projectile moving at near light speed didn't care about energy shields. It went through them like they weren't there. A Kelnar destroyer simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, the next there was an expanding cloud of debris and vapor. The railgun round had hit it dead center, transferring so much kinetic energy that the ship exploded from the inside out. The 8th second brought panic. Ship captains across the fleet started shouting orders. Some tried to return fire. Some tried to run. Some froze, unable to process what they were seeing. Their formations fell apart as discipline broke down. Ships moved into each other's firing lines. Collision alarms blared as vessels came too close together. Vexler watched his fleet dissolve into confusion and felt ice in his blood. This wasn't a battle. It was a slaughter. The human ship danced between his vessels, somehow moving faster than its specifications said it could. Those singularities provided propulsion too, he realized. The humans were using gravitational fields to pull themselves around, ignoring the normal rules of thrust and inertia. The 9th second was when the Defiance demonstrated its close-range weapons. Avrax's frigate got too close, trying to ram the human ship in desperation. Energy beams lashed out from the Defiance's hull. Not plasma or lasers, but something else. The beams touched the Vrax's ship and its hull started to age. Metal corroded in seconds. Welds failed. Electronics died. The ship fell apart from rapid decay, as if centuries had passed in moments. They're weaponizing time, Vexelar's science officer whispered. They're using localized time acceleration fields as weapons. The 10th second brought the first lull. The Defiance stopped moving and hung in space, surrounded by debris and dying ships. 47 vessels from the hegemony fleet were gone, some destroyed completely, some disabled and drifting, some still technically intact but with crews too terrified to function, and the human ship hadn't been touched. Not a single shot had landed. Every attack had been deflected by those impossible gravitational fields, or had simply missed as the Defiance moved in ways that shouldn't be possible. Captain. Chen's voice came over the open communication channel, calm and professional, as if she had just finished a routine patrol. All hegemony vessels, this is Captain Chen. Cease fire immediately. We have disabled a significant portion of your fleet. We do not wish to kill more of you, but we will if you continue to attack. Power down your weapons. Vexelar stared at the screen showing the human captain. His mandibles hung loose in shock. 10 seconds. The battle had lasted 10 seconds and his fleet was broken. Commander, what are your orders? His tactical officer asked. What were his orders? Retreat, continue fighting? Neither option seemed viable. If he retreated, he would be labeled a coward. If he continued, his entire fleet would die. And die for what? To fight something that shouldn't exist? Let them regroup, Chen said, as if reading his mind. Take a moment. Think about what you've seen. Then decide if you really want to continue this. The communication cut off. The human ship just sat there, waiting. Around it, the wreckage of 47 warships drifted in the void. Inside the Defiance, Chen's crew was checking systems and recharging weapons. They had used only a fraction of their capability. If the aliens knew that, they would probably surrender immediately. But Chen wanted them to think about it first. She wanted the lesson to sink in. Humanity had come to the galaxy not as beggars or supplicants, but as equals. And if the established powers couldn't accept that peacefully, humanity was prepared to teach the lesson the hard way. 10 seconds had passed. The next move belonged to the hegemony. Chen hoped they would choose wisely, but she was ready either way. On Earth 20 years earlier, the discovery had changed everything. Dr. James Morrison stood in front of the United Nations Assembly, holding a datapad that contained the most important information humanity had ever received. The galaxy wasn't empty. Thousands of intelligent species lived among the stars, connected by faster-than-light travel and united under various empires and federations. They've been out there for thousands of years, Morrison said, and they've been following the same technological path for most of that time. Energy weapons, plasma cannons, particle beams, force fields. They've refined these technologies to incredible levels, but they're all variations on the same basic concepts. The Secretary General leaned forward. What does that mean for us? Morrison smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It means they've all agreed on what's safe and what's not. They have rules about what weapons are acceptable, and they expect us to follow those rules. Should we? Morrison looked at the faces around the room. Leaders from every nation on Earth stared back at him. We're 20 years behind them in some areas. We only just figured out FTL travel, but we're ahead in others. Way ahead, because we developed our technology in isolation, without anyone telling us what was forbidden. That meeting had led to the creation of the Special Weapons Development Program. Humanity knew it was entering a galaxy full of established powers who might not welcome them kindly. Earth needed an edge, something that would make the aliens think twice before treating humans as primitives or prey. The problem was simple. Humanity couldn't outproduce the galactic empires. Earth had one world and a few colonies. The Zrathian hegemony alone controlled 47 star systems. Trying to match them ship for ship would be impossible. Humanity needed to make every ship count for 100 enemy vessels. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a physicist from Japan, proposed the solution. We stop thinking about weapons as tools for destroying ships. We start thinking about weapons as tools for controlling the fundamental forces of the universe. The other scientists looked at her like she was crazy. Explain, the project director said. Yuki pulled up a holographic display showing a black hole. The galactic species have incredible technology, but they're conservative. They avoid anything too dangerous. Weaponized singularities, time manipulation, spatial distortion. These are all theoretically possible, but the risks are high. One mistake and you could destroy yourself instead of your enemy. So they don't use them, someone said. Exactly. But we can. Yuki's eyes gleamed. We're already the underdogs. We're already taking a risk just by going out there, so why not take bigger risks? Why not use weapons they've decided are too dangerous? If we can control them, we'll have an advantage they can't match. The project director looked skeptical. Can we control them? Yuki's smile was confident. Give me 3 years and enough funding and I'll give you a ship that can fight a fleet. She had been right, but it had taken 5 years, not 3. The Defiance was the result, a testbed for every forbidden technology humanity could develop. Miniature singularities for weapons and propulsion, temporal acceleration fields, gravitational lensing for defense, railguns enhanced with gravity assist. Every system on the ship violated some galactic convention about what was safe or acceptable. Back in the present, Commander Vexillar was learning the price of galactic conservatism. He had rallied what remained of his fleet, pulling ships back into formation. 253 vessels remained combat-capable. The rest were destroyed or disabled. Those were terrible losses, but he still had numerical superiority. All ships prepare for coordinated assault, he ordered. Focus fire on that human vessel. Overwhelming firepower will penetrate any defense. It was sound tactical thinking for fighting a normal enemy. But the Defiance wasn't normal. Vexillar was about to learn just how abnormal it truly was. The hegemony fleet opened fire together. Hundreds of plasma bolts and missiles filled the space between the fleets. It was enough firepower to glass a planet. It should have been enough to destroy one small ship. The Defiance released more singularity pods, dozens of them this time. They spread out in a sphere around the human vessel. The incoming fire hit those gravitational wells and curved away, pulled into new trajectories. Missiles that should have struck head-on were yanked sideways, flying past harmlessly. Energy beams bent and scattered, their coherence lost as they passed through distorted space. A few shots made it through the defensive field. The Defiance's shields flared bright as they absorbed the hits. For a moment, Vexillar felt hope. They were damaging it. But the hope died quickly as the shields reformed, stronger than before. The human ship's defensive systems were adapting, learning from each attack. Then the Defiance deployed something new. Small objects, different from the singularity pods, shot out from its hull. They looked like mines, drifting into the space between the two fleets. Several alien ships flew past them, dismissing them as spent munitions or debris. That was a mistake. The mines activated, and the ships that had passed them suddenly slowed. Not stopped, just slowed, like they were moving through thick syrup. Inside those vessels, crews screamed as they aged rapidly. Seconds passed on their clocks while minutes passed outside. Time itself was different inside those fields. A Vraxis captain, young and ambitious, turned to his second-in-command to give an order. By the time he finished speaking, his second-in-command had gray hair and age spots. The captain looked at his own hands and watched wrinkles form across his skin. His crew was aging years and seconds. Other ships hit different mines and stopped completely, frozen in time. From the outside, they looked fine, but inside, time had stopped. Crews were trapped in a single moment, aware but unable to move or think or do anything but exist in frozen horror. Vexillar watched his fleet fall apart. These weren't weapons in any sense, he understood. The humans weren't just fighting with superior firepower. They were fighting with the fundamental forces of nature itself. They had turned physics into a weapon. Retreat, he finally ordered. All ships retreat to Rally Point Omega. The surviving ships turned and ran. But running from weapons that controlled time and gravity wasn't simple. Ships that tried to jump to FTL found their drives failing, as gravitational fields disrupted the delicate balance needed for faster-than-light travel. Others successfully jumped, only to emerge light years off course, thrown to random locations by the distorted space. Captain Chen watched them run and didn't pursue. She had made her point. Now came the second part of the plan. She opened a channel to the Hegemony flagship. Commander Vexillar, this is Captain Chen. I'm offering surrender terms. Power down your weapons and your ships can leave unharmed. Continue fighting and I will destroy every vessel in your fleet. The choice is yours. Vexillar's pride warred with his survival instinct. He was a commander of the hegemony, descended from warriors who had never surrendered, but he was also watching his fleet die against an enemy he couldn't fight. You offer mercy? He asked bitterly. I offer sense, Chen replied. This doesn't have to be a war. We can coexist peacefully. Vexillar made his decision. Pride was a dangerous thing. Commander Vexillar had built his entire career on never backing down, never surrendering, never showing weakness. His ancestors had conquered 47 star systems through strength and determination. They hadn't done it by accepting surrender terms from primitives in cobbled-together ships. No, Vexillar said, his voice hard. The hegemony does not surrender, especially not to humans. Captain Chen's image on the screen showed no surprise, no anger, just a slight sadness. I was afraid you'd say that. You should know, Commander, that what you've seen so far is not our full capability. Vexillar cut the channel. All remaining ships form up on the flagship. We attack together, concentrated fire on a single target. Nothing can withstand the combined might of the hegemony. It was a desperate plan, but it was all he had left. 50 capital ships, including his flagship, formed a tight formation. 200 support vessels arranged themselves in a protective sphere around the heavy hitters. Every weapon was charged to maximum. Every shield was at full power. It was enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. All ships fire on my command, Vexillar ordered. 3, 2, 1, fire! The concentrated barrage lit up the darkness like a newborn star. Plasma bolts, particle beams, missiles, and kinetic rounds all converged on the Defiance. The volume of fire was so intense that it overwhelmed the gravitational wells. Some shots made it through. The human ship's shields flared, flickered, and for a moment Vexillar thought they would fail. The Defiance shuddered under the impact. Alerts flashed on Captain Chen's command console. Minor hull damage on decks 7 and 8, her tactical officer reported. Shields holding at 60%, Chen nodded calmly. They earned that hit. Now show them why it doesn't matter. Execute Prometheus. Her crew moved with practiced efficiency. Commands were entered. Safety interlocks were disengaged, and the Defiance did something that made every alien sensor operator question their sanity. The ship split apart. The hull separated along seams that hadn't been visible before, dividing into 8 distinct sections. Each section had its own engines, its own weapons, its own power source. The single ship that the hegemony had been fighting was actually 8 ships pretending to be one. Impossible, Vexillar whispered. The power readings, the mass calculations, they all indicated a single vessel. His science officer's voice shook. They were masking their true signatures, Commander. The gravitational fields distorted our sensors. We saw what they wanted us to see. The 8 sections of the Defiance spread out, surrounding the hegemony formation. Each section was smaller than the original ship, but they all carried the same impossible weapons. Singularities, time mines, gravity-enhanced railguns. Now instead of facing one enemy, Vexillar's fleet was surrounded by 8. This was the plan all along, Vexillar realized. They wanted us to commit to a full assault. They wanted us bunched together. Captain Chen's voice came over every ship's communication system. Commander, you were warned. You chose this. Don't say we didn't give you a chance. The 8 sections moved in perfect coordination, like dancers performing a choreographed routine. They released their singularity pods simultaneously, creating an interconnected web of gravitational fields. The pods positioned themselves around the hegemony fleet in a sphere, each one influencing the others. A Kelnar captain tried to fly his ship out of the formation, seeking escape. His vessel accelerated, heading for the nearest gap in the encirclement. But as he reached the edge of the sphere, the gravitational forces caught him. Multiple singularities pulled in different directions and the ship was stretched. Metal groaned. The hull cracked. The ship came apart like wet paper, torn to pieces by competing gravitational forces. They've created a gravitational cage, Vexillar's tactical officer said. Multiple overlapping fields. Anything trying to leave is pulled in different directions simultaneously. It was called the Terran Noose in human tactical manuals, though the aliens didn't know that. 8 ships creating a web of gravitational death that nothing could escape. It was humanity's answer to the question, how do you trap an enemy fleet that can jump to faster than light speeds? You make it so that moving in any direction means destruction. The only safe place was the center of the formation, where the gravitational forces balanced out. And that was exactly where Vexillar's fleet was trapped. Disable our engines, Vexillar ordered. All ships minimal power. Don't try to move. It was the smartest thing he could have done, but it came too late for many ships. Captains who panicked and tried to run found themselves pulled apart. Ships that attempted to jump to FTL had their drive cores overload, unable to cope with the gravitational stress. Within 2 minutes, another 20 vessels were gone. The 8 sections of the Defiance then demonstrated their railguns. They fired in sequence 8 rounds per second, targeting the largest ships first. The capital ships had the strongest shields, but shields meant nothing against projectiles moving at near light speed. The rounds punched through shields and armor like they weren't there. Vexillar's flagship was hit 3 times in 5 seconds. The first round penetrated the forward armor and destroyed the main plasma cannon. The second hit the port side, causing explosive decompression in 6 decks. The third round grazed the ship, but even a glancing blow at that speed caused catastrophic damage. The hull buckled and internal systems failed throughout the vessel. Emergency lighting flickered on across the Eternal Dominion. Vexillar picked himself up from where the impacts had thrown him. His bridge crew was dead or dying. Smoke filled the air, and somewhere deep in the ship alarms were screaming. "Damage report," he croaked, but no one answered. His communication system was dead. Across the fleet, the story was the same. Every capital ship was either destroyed or crippled. The support vessels were trapped, unable to help, unable to flee. The battle had lasted 43 seconds from the moment the Defiance split apart. 43 seconds to destroy the fighting power of the hegemony fleet. The railgun fire stopped. The 8 sections of the Defiance held their positions, maintaining the gravitational cage but no longer attacking. Captain Chen's voice came through on emergency channels, ensuring every ship could hear her. "This is Captain Chen to all hegemony vessels. Your fleet is defeated. Your command ship is disabled. You have 2 options. Surrender now, or I will collapse the gravitational cage and crush every ship in this formation. You have 30 seconds to decide." Vexillar tried to reach his communication console, but it was sparking and dead. He couldn't give orders. He couldn't coordinate his fleet. He couldn't do anything except watch as his officers, the ones still alive, looked to him for guidance he couldn't provide. 20 seconds passed. 10, 5. Then a voice came over the emergency channel. Not Vexillar's, but his second-in-command from one of the surviving cruisers. "Human vessel. This is Commander Zelkon of the Crimson Blade. We surrender. Please, no more killing." Vexillar wanted to rage at the surrender, but he had no way to countermand it. And truthfully, he wasn't sure he would have if he could. He had led his fleet into this disaster through pride and underestimation. At least surrender meant some of his people would live. The gravitational cage remained in place, but the pressure eased slightly. The ships trapped inside could move carefully without being torn apart. Chen's voice came again, softer now. "Wise choice, Commander Zelkon. All hegemony vessels will remain in place. Tend to your wounded. 1 ship and only 1 will be allowed to leave to carry a message back to your government." Vexillar closed his eyes. 1 ship to carry word of this humiliation. 1 ship to tell the hegemony that their mighty fleet had been destroyed by a single human vessel. 1 ship to change everything. The scout ship Whisper of Stars limped away from the graveyard, its engines barely functional, its crew traumatized beyond anything their training had prepared them for. Captain Tivera, a young Zarathian officer who had been chosen for this duty precisely because she was junior and expendable, sat in her command chair and tried not to shake. Behind her ship, the 8 sections of the Defiance were recombining, the modular components sliding back together with mechanical precision. In another moment, they would form a single vessel again, and no one would know it had ever been anything else. Except now, 230 ships knew the truth. Those that survived would spread the word. "Incoming transmission," her communications officer said quietly. "It's the human captain." Tavera wanted to ignore it, to run at full speed back to hegemony space, but she didn't dare. "Put it through." Captain Chen's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired, Tavera noticed. Not injured or stressed, just tired, like someone who had finished a difficult day's work and was ready to rest. "Captain Tavera," Chen said, using her name though they had never been introduced. "You're carrying more than just news of a battle. You're carrying a message. I want to make sure you understand it fully. Tavera's voice came out steadier than she felt. I understand that humanity has powerful weapons. That message is clear enough. Chen shook her head. That's part of it, but not all. The message is this: humanity does not seek war. We seek respect. We came to the galaxy hoping for peaceful contact, for trade and cultural exchange, for friendship. What we found was mockery and threats. Commander Vexler's fleet represents the galactic attitude toward us. You see us as primitives, as lesser beings, as something to be controlled or dismissed. Chen leaned forward, and her eyes held an intensity that made Tavera lean back instinctively. We are not primitives. We are not weak. We are different. While your species spent millennia perfecting energy weapons and shields, we went down different paths. We asked different questions. We took risks you deemed too dangerous, and because of that we have capabilities you cannot match with your current technology. You're threatening the entire galaxy, Tavera said. No, Chen replied firmly. We're establishing our place in it. There's a difference. When you go back to your government, you tell them this: Earth has built 200 ships like the Defiance. We're building more every month. Each one can fight a fleet, as you've witnessed today. We have stationed these vessels at strategic points around human space and along the major trade routes. Tavera felt cold. 200 ships like the Defiance? The galaxy would burn. You're starting a war. Chen's expression softened slightly. We're preventing one. The Defiance was sent here knowing we would encounter hostility. This was a test, Captain Tavera. We needed to know if the galaxy would accept us as equals or treat us as prey. Commander Vexlar gave us our answer. Now we're giving ours. The transmission shifted, showing a star map. Human space was marked in blue, a small cluster of systems near the galactic rim. But spreading out from it were red dots, hundreds of them, marking the positions of human warships. We will defend ourselves, Chen continued. We will respond to aggression with overwhelming force. But we will also trade fairly with anyone who approaches us in peace. We will share our knowledge with those who share theirs. We will be partners to those who will have us as partners. Chen's face returned to the screen. Humanity learned something important in our history, Captain. We learned that the universe is not kind. We learned that survival requires strength and the will to use it. We learned that peace is only possible between equals. For thousands of years, your species and others like you have had no equals. You've set the rules, enforced the peace, and punished those who disagreed with you. That time is ending. You can't fight the entire galaxy, Tavera said. We don't have to, Chen replied. We just have to be strong enough that fighting us costs more than trading with us. We have to be dangerous enough that respect is the logical choice. Commander Vexlar chose mockery and aggression. It cost him his fleet. The next commander will choose more wisely. The transmission ended. Tavera sat in silence for a long moment before turning to her navigator. Set course for the hegemony capital. Maximum speed. The journey took 3 days. 3 days for Tavera to review the battle recordings, to try to understand what had happened, to prepare her report. 3 days to realize that everything she had known about the Galactic Order was obsolete. The hegemony capital was a massive station orbiting a gas giant in the home system. It housed billions of beings and served as the administrative heart of the empire. When Tavera arrived, she was immediately summoned to the High Council chamber. She stood before the 7 members of the High Council and delivered her report. She showed them the recordings. She watched their faces change from disbelief to shock to fear as they witnessed the Defiance destroy their fleet in less than a minute. This is some kind of trick, Counselor Vareth insisted. Humans are primitives. This isn't possible. I was there, Tavera said quietly. I saw it with my own eyes. The recordings are genuine. The Eternal Dominion is destroyed. Commander Vexlar is dead. 2/3 of our fleet is gone, and the humans barely used a fraction of their capability. The council chamber fell silent. Finally, the eldest counselor, a female named Ashvara who had served for over a century, spoke. What do they want? Respect, Tavera said. They want to be treated as equals, not as inferiors. They will trade peacefully with us, but they will destroy anyone who attacks them. Counselor Vareth slammed his fist on the table. We should call for a galactic coalition. Every species together can overwhelm them. Ashvara shook her head slowly. Can we? They have weapons that bend gravity and time. They have ships that split apart and recombine. They think in ways we don't understand. How many fleets will we lose trying to destroy them? How many worlds will burn? So we do nothing? Vareth demanded. We adapt, Ashvara replied. We recognize that the galaxy has changed. Humanity has arrived as a major power, whether we like it or not. We can fight them and die, or we can deal with them and live. I prefer to live. The debate raged for hours, but eventually Ashvara's wisdom prevailed. The hegemony would not seek immediate revenge. Instead, they would observe, learn, and adapt. Messages went out to other galactic powers. Emergency meetings were called. The recordings of the battle spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Some species called for war. The Vraxis Union swore vengeance for their lost ships. The Kelnar Collective demanded humanity be quarantined to their own space. But other, wiser voices counseled caution. The eldest species, those who had seen empires rise and fall, recognized the truth. Humanity had introduced something new to the galactic equation, and the old rules no longer applied. 6 months later, the first trade delegation from the hegemony arrived at Earth. They came not as conquerors or teachers, but as equals. The negotiations were difficult, but they were negotiations, not ultimatums. Humanity had earned its seat at the galactic table through strength, and now both sides were learning to coexist. On the Defiance, Captain Sarah Chen stood in her quarters and looked at the stars through the viewport. The ship had returned to Earth for refit and resupply. Soon they would go back out, continuing to patrol and protect human space. But the mission was different now. They weren't just defending against threats. They were representing humanity's place in the galaxy. Her executive officer, Commander Marcus Webb, entered the room. The new orders came through. We're heading to the Kelnar border next month. Apparently they're still making noises about revenge. Chen smiled slightly. Do you think they'll actually try something? No, Webb said confidently. They saw what happened to the hegemony. They'll bluster and threaten, but they'll back down. Everyone will eventually. Maybe, Chen said. Or maybe we'll have to fight again. But at least now they know the cost. Webb looked at her curiously. Do you think we did the right thing? A lot of people died in that battle. Chen was quiet for a moment. Commander Vexillar had a choice. He could have let us pass. He could have accepted our request for peaceful transit. Instead, he chose mockery and violence. I gave him multiple chances to back down. He refused them all. Those deaths are on him, not on us. But we knew how he would react, Webb pressed. We went there knowing it would end in violence. We went there knowing we needed to establish boundaries, Chen corrected. Could we have done it differently? Maybe. But would the result have been any different? If we had shown weakness, the hegemony would have treated us as subjects. If we had avoided them entirely, we would always be running. We chose to stand our ground and prove we couldn't be pushed around. Sometimes that's the price of respect. Webb nodded slowly. And now? Now we see if the lesson sticks, Chen said. We see if the galaxy can accept us as we are. And if not, we'll be ready for that too. The Defiance prepared for its next mission, one of hundreds of human ships now patrolling the stars. Humanity had arrived in the galaxy not with a whisper but with a roar. The old powers would have to adjust to a new reality. There was a new player in galactic politics, and this player played by different rules. In the darkness between the stars, the balance of power had shifted. The age of human expansion had begun.